The title of the webinar is Summer 2020, How to Prepare for Fall Classes, Standardized Tests, and College Admissions in General. My name is Patrick Keenan. I work at AJ Tutoring, a tutoring company in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I run the Menlo Park office. And I have many years of experience helping students either prepare for academics, rigorous academics, either in college or in high school, and for standardized tests from high school all the way through graduate exams. Let me see here. Why don't you introduce yourself, Stacey?
All right, I'm Stacey Hernandez, and I run a company called The Best You College Admissions Consulting, and I have been in the business for about 20 years. I started on the college side. I worked at Northeastern University in admissions, and then Johns Hopkins University in admissions. I also worked at 2 different independent schools in the Boulder area in Colorado, and was the college counselor at those 2 independent schools. And for about the last 5 years, I've been a private college counselor. So in our fields, they're called independent education consultants. I still call myself a college counselor because that's specifically what I do, is I work with the college admissions process. So.
And Chris?
I am Chris Hunt. I sort of started life as a journalist for pretty serious publications like The Economist and the Wall Street Journal. And then I became far less serious and wrote a couple of travel adventure books. And about 6 years back, a friend of mine from college asked if I could help her son with his college essays. And I gave it a shot, enjoyed doing it, and have been doing it ever since. And I'll say that most of what I know about college admissions outside of essays, I learned from Stacey Hernandez.
I learned a lot from you too.
Cool. So I think we wanted to talk a bit about the current testing landscape, and then also about how we can use the summer given the testing landscape as well. So I was specifically going to talk a bit more about testing. I'm sure Stacey's got some great insights as well. One of the big things that's going around, the dominoes are falling more and more every day. Today, Harvard, test optional is a big word that's getting kicked around a lot. My impression of test optional is that if you are able to test and able to do well on these tests, it will still probably be to your benefit to test. If you can get access to the test. I think it's a big challenge right now just to get access. So one big thing is register for your dates early because they're filling up. At least in our area, I have one student already that's traveling down to Santa Barbara to take the July SAT, which is a few hundred miles. It's not the best in terms of getting the best results. If you my guess is they're going to have to stay there overnight in a hotel and wake up early in the morning to take their test. Online future testing, I think that's largely a thing that seems to have been, Stacey, correct me if I'm wrong here, doesn't seem to be on the horizon any longer. They were talking about it for a while.
Well, so the SAT, so the College Board, the company that owns the SAT, has decided to withdraw from any at-home or online testing for this admissions year. The ACT is still trying to roll out at home, they're calling it at-home testing for the fall and the winter. They haven't set on a particular date yet, but they are trying to do that. The one thing when you're hearing that information about at-home testing, if you are looking at the highly selective schools, the one thing that's very important to know is that some colleges are already stating that they are not going to accept the at-home testing. So that's why this test optional movement has become so significant, because many colleges just don't have confidence in this online or at-home rollout that they're working on. A lot of schools will accept those at-home tests, but it's just so brand new. They really haven't been able to test it well. I know in China, and I think I think any student outside of the US, I believe last year the ACT converted to online only testing. So, so it has been in the process for the last year, but US based it hasn't. And so there's just so much controversy about that. I wanted to bring up and just take a step back about test optional really quick, because there's so many terms, there's so much going on that families have so many questions about this whole test optional piece. So test optional right now means you can submit a test or you don't submit the test. So if the college has a policy that says we are test optional, on your application, you would check the test optional box to say, yes, I want you to look at my testing, or no, I do not. So you would, if you decide to go test optional to the colleges that allow it, do not list your testing on your application, because that way colleges won't see it. But you also, anytime you check the box, please review me as test optional, or please, or not, it says something like, please omit my test scores. They will not review the test scores. So that's very important to know, because there is always a question on each college's individual application. And that usually it's the Common App and it's the Common Application Supplement. So just know that. There are a few schools that are saying, we are not going to even ask for testing, or nor do we want to see it, versus you can choose to go test optional or not. Caltech had a very interesting statement to say it's not going to be a part of our process next year. And now they're rolling out, like they're going test optional also for the future. It's permanent, but there's some language that's a little different on each college. Most colleges are saying test optional. So if you want to submit them, submit them. If you don't, don't. And every day there are new and new schools reporting. So the best resource to find out who's test optional for just next year, who's test optional permanently, is fairtest.org. FAIR test.org, fairtest.org. It's the number one resource to find all of the information, because I'm even finding some colleges have not even reported on their websites that they're going test optional, but it's on the fair test list. So I think what colleges are currently doing right now is they're updating all of their requirements. So on the websites, not all of the information is updated yet. So sorry to jump in about that, but there's just so much to talk about with testing.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot going on right now. And I think the main message that I would want people to take away is that if you can get access to a test, if you can do well on that test, in general, that's still going to be a benefit in admission. Mm-hmm. There's some other new things that are kind of strange happening as well. So super scoring is a thing that a lot of people have questions about, like, what is it? Well, super scoring is when you can take multiple tests and they can combine the best sections across multiple dates. Many colleges do super score. I'd say the majority of them do. Is that accurate?
For the SAT. For the ACT, not many schools super score, but it's starting to change. We'll see what happens with this new section-based testing and what happens.
And the ACT is sort of leaning into this and really developing sort of this super score program for themselves. And what they're doing is they're releasing a computer-based testing ACT, which is after you've taken a full paper ACT in the United States, you can then sign up to retake up to 3 sections on a computer. And we don't quite know where or when this is going to occur. I think they said a testing center, which I'm not sure if it's going to be Prometric or whatever, but the first opportunity for that is going to be September, the September ACT. Testing timelines, well, big differences in timelines between rising juniors and rising seniors, right? Rising juniors still have time to figure out, maybe play the differences between the tests and figure out which test is going to suit them better. They can sort of use the summer to get some practice tests in and determine if one of these tests is a better fit for them, and start getting prepared in kind of a casual way over summer if they wanted to. You can also wait and start preparing during the school year. The people who really like to prepare over the summer, in my experience, are people who know they have really busy junior years ahead of them, especially with sports. If they have sports and a heavy class load, a lot of people like to get the test prep done over the summer. And I think that's fine, and it it does provide a little bit of a benefit in that it helps keep you engaged over the summer in sort of academic pursuits and sort of combats sort of the fatigue and brain drain over the summer. I think rising 12th graders, people are going to be seniors next year, have a very different landscape. I think many of them, the majority of them, were unable to test because the first test that a lot of people plan on taking is the March SAT, and almost all of our students were unable to take the March SAT. And then, of course, the April ACT, the May SAT, and the June SAT right after that. So I think 12th graders, rising seniors are facing sort of uncertainty in terms of access to testing. Will they even be able to take the test? Tests are optional. What does that mean? I think we've talked a little bit about that already. And then how do you prepare if you want to take these tests in light of all these difficulties? I think with access to testing, I mentioned this a little bit previously, registering early is key. The website almost blew up when they opened up registration for the SAT like a couple weeks ago. Mad rush of seniors trying to get in and register. That means juniors are going to have a very hard time registering. People who are just kind of casually milling around, deciding whether or not they want to test, are going to have a hard time finding test dates. So I would register for the test dates that you want to take early in anticipation that they will hopefully happen. You're going to stay away from likely there. I believe, it's hard to see the future, but it definitely seems like some of these test dates are happening currently, right? So the June ACT did go off in a few places. Some places they shifted locations. I think in California, it's been really drawn around county lines where they were able to have tests or not for the June ACT. The July ACT is the next one. Again, with regards to access, I think it's going to be really hard to access the July ACT unless they open up additional testing facilities. They say they're trying to do that. They, in the past, have been really opaque about when they're going to do that, and they just kind of drop test dates. They just open them up as they gain access to them. So if you're looking at those as test dates, you just have to keep checking in either on the College Board or the ACT website and try and register.
You know what I'm even telling students now, that there are some, so if you're registered for a test, just make sure you confirm with the testing center that they are actually open, because some of my students, their testing centers actually weren't open, but the ACT said they were.
Yeah.
So they were able to get that information a few weeks before the test. But I did have one student, I think it was a while back, and like when we were really closing down everything, that showed up for their site, and the site person never told everyone that they were canceling it. And that was like right when we were moving into lockdown. So that's something I'm telling. And, I'm also telling 11th graders now, rising 11th graders, is you may even want to avoid fall testing altogether. For those really strong testers and the people who, with the crazy schedules, like it's always great to prep during the summer, but you are not in the priority in getting a testing spot. The priorities go to first-time testers that are seniors or retakes for seniors versus 11th graders. And I'm even seeing, like, if you're registering for a subject test, you're not even getting the priority in those spots. It's really got to go to those first-time testers or the students that are rescheduling a test. So the students that I see that are getting subject tests, they're going hours away. They have to drive hours away to get to their spot. Juniors, I haven't seen a junior get into any of the fall testing dates. So I'm encouraging juniors, you can prep, you can study, but think about more winter and spring testing. And if you're going to probably need to do test prep during the school year.
Yeah. And, as a junior, there's no harm at all. In fact, I actually usually recommend waiting until the March test anyways. And all of the seniors will be out of the system by then. The last test they could possibly eke out would be a December test, which is, well, let's say not recommended.
No.
But
you could, for regular decision only, you could get away with the December test.
Yeah.
You,
I think speaking more to the parents of rising 12th graders, rising seniors right now, if you have registered for the test, I think the key is that we know in advance that our testing timeline is going to be really condensed, and you're not going to have a lot of opportunities for retakes. So if you're taking these tests, it's worthwhile to prepare. Start preparing early. I think. Well, it's not even early anymore. It's summer.
yeah, it's not early. Yeah.
But do prepare for the majority of the summer. And I'm not saying the majority of the days of the summer, but spread your prep out over the summer. I think that's the way people can, in my estimation, make the biggest changes, because you're not going to have opportunities to make changes after you take the first test and decide that you want to retake, because the retakes are really they're only like a month apart. There's only a week in between the November and October dates. It's really quick. So when the tests start hitting, you have to be ready already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I give you just a additional perspective, which is, I think it's important to remember that everyone's in the same boat. So everyone's going to have a hard time getting tests, which means that maybe people only get one test, whereas in previous years they could get 2 or 3. As a result, the scores that people see on the admissions end might be a bit little lower. But it's not as if you're going to lose your edge, because if all the scores are lower, some people don't have much, it's just going to look a little different, and admissions people understand what's going on and seem to be pretty interested both in being flexible and in broadening the way they make their choices.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
And never mind that they're going to have to anyway.
Yeah.
With
They're going to have to.
This is the test that we're talking about. The June ACT is obviously no longer an option, as it was last Saturday. July ACT is a rare option. You'd have to check in and see. Hopefully they open up something new. August SAT has subject exams attached. So if you're looking to get subject tests in, that's a good time to do it. September has no subject tests. So that would be a main test date only. The next weekend is the October test. They're also set.
Oh, I was just going to say, and the reason why we're only listing up to this date is because if you're a rising senior and you're applying to colleges, deadlines so far, we haven't heard any news on if colleges are changing their deadlines. So we're planning accordingly. If for the early rounds, so early action, early decision rounds, that typically is November 1st. There's a couple of October 15th schools. But if you have an early application, which most students do, the last date that they normally take is the October SAT and the September ACT. Then after that, they won't take. Normally, colleges for early action or early decision will not take the October ACT. So that's why we always look at just fall testing really ending in October for rising seniors. And if you are only applying to regular decision, which is typically around a December 15th, January 1st, January 15th deadline, then you could get in a later date. But again, most students have early applications. And if your school has an early action, you want to do early action. It's getting your application done earlier. You're getting your decision in earlier. It's your best shot of getting in. The percentages can be a little bit higher in the early round than in the regular round for early action.
So, and if you're not doing early action, there are a couple other tests that you can take. But again, I think the December one is really too close. I think that's like a last ditch emergency test date. The main downside of the December SAT, this doesn't even work for the ACT. The December SAT, you'd actually have to forward your scores directly to the colleges you're applying to before you actually get to see the results. So I think for obvious reasons, that's not ideal.
And that would be the same for that October ACT. The schools that would accept it, you would have to do the same thing and send them blindly before getting to see those test scores. Yeah.
So I think we all have some perspectives on how to use the summer. I think the main thing that we agree on is that you should be using your summer towards college applications, and there's a lot of productive ways to do so. I think the key is to find some productive ways to utilize your summer, despite the obvious limitations of our current situation. I think there's a lot of things that you can still do, and I think all of us can each speak to different things. The things that I would like to speak to about or speak to in terms of utilizing your summer, I think one would be if you're not looking to testing immediately, then there are things you can do over summer towards just shoring up your academic experience. I think a lot of my students, especially on the academic side, have really had like a downgrade in their experience towards the end of last year. Obviously, the last 3 months or so, many schools went to a hold harmless grading system or pass no pass grading system. There are canceled finals everywhere. Entire units have gotten left out of traditional classes. Some of these classes are really important indeed for standardized tests as well, but some of them are just important in order to take the next class, right? Foundational English, math, history classes. You want to make sure that you know all you need to know to move on to the next one. The other thing is that it's with such a essentially long summer, I don't know, probably doesn't feel like a summer, but it's such a long gap in between school years. I think doing something to stay academically engaged over that time is really important. I know I talked to Stacy earlier about perhaps even just reading more, right? Maybe stuff outside of your normal summer reading. But anything you can do to keep your mind sharp and stay engaged over the summer is going to be beneficial. Anything you guys wanted to add here?
Yeah, well, we have lots of slides that will go through all of this too, so we can start moving on, and we'll get to that. Michael has a question around if colleges don't have standardized testing, what are the criteria they're going to evaluate? And we're going to dive right into that, and that's really what's connected to how to utilize your summer. And also, Chris is going to talk a lot about this when he jumps into essay pieces. So just to cover a little bit of that, and then you'll hear a lot of it within these next few slides. So if colleges are not going to take your testing, right? So if you're going test optional, then they have to evaluate your application and scrutinize the other pieces even more. So, and I don't like to use that word scrutinize, but it is, if testing is off, they're going to focus on the other pieces more. So that includes transcripts, grades. That also includes letters of recommendation are going to become more essential this year. That also includes your personal qualities. And so the personal qualities piece is how colleges, they see that through, again, letters of recommendation, essays, the activities you do, and those sort of pieces are going to become even more essential in this application process. So those pieces are what colleges are going to focus most of their time. So this summer becomes a really important part of your application process. So one of the top things is you're building your academic niche or getting more exposure to different college majors. Colleges like to see students that have focused academic interests. So you can be absolutely undecided. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you get down to writing essays and the essays, colleges are going to be asking, what do you want to study and why? It's important to be able to have some language around what you may want to study. Also, when you're selecting schools, you want to know the types of majors that you're interested in at those schools. It's important to get exposure to majors ahead of time. So this summer, you could do some personality assessments. You can do some college major exploration. Big Future, which is a website through the College Board, you can even Google College Board, Big Future. They have a lot of major descriptions on there. There's College Majors 101. You could start reading there. There's some great personality assessments. U-Science is a good one. Most schools have personality assessments already built into their Naviance. Or if you're using one, if it's not Naviance, if it's one of the other services they're using to help with your college application process, you may want to look at what personality assessments your school has offered you. But building the academic niche is important. So that means exploring. One of the easiest ways to do that this summer would be through Coursera and edX. those massive open online courses, or MOOCs, MOOCs. Coursera and edX are offering free classes all summer because of COVID. So students can get on there and take a class, and they're typically pre-recorded sessions that college professors do. So they may be recording their lectures, and then they bundle into a mini course, and they offer the course with the videos, but they also may offer some quizzes in between. I'm taking Intro to Psychology with a Yale professor right now. And again, they're all pre-recorded videos, but I'm just interested in it. And my daughter is, so we're doing it together. But you can go on to Coursera and edX and get exposure to all different kinds of academic majors and academic offerings. Some students are doing virtual internships this summer to get more exposure to a particular field. Other students are doing reading. They're just invested in watching documentaries or reading books on different academic subjects. So focusing on your academic exploration is important. The non-academic piece is essential in your application process. Now, yes, they're going to be more lenient in the COVID world we live in now, and students may not be able to play their sports, or students may not have been able to do activities in the same way that they do during the school year during a traditional school year. However, colleges expect students to stay active, and there are lots of ways to stay active during COVID. There are ways to volunteer online. There are ways to do social distancing volunteering. There's ways to stay involved. I'm seeing students starting blogs, starting podcasts, starting Facebook groups on different social justice issues. I'm seeing students making masks. I'm seeing students getting jobs right now. So staying active is essential in this admissions process. I will tell you, I'm starting to see colleges react to what we're going through, especially in the US. So I'm seeing US colleges starting to think about their essay topics and reflecting the racial injustices that are happening in this country. I'm seeing colleges thinking about are they going to present these essays that reflect the world we live in, and an expectation that students are getting involved with what our world is going through right now and being active in different ways. So staying active is really important. And then, what Patrick was saying before, keep learning. So there's ways to stay involved. And Patrick is also at the end, there's another slide. He'll go into some more details around learning and what you can be doing to stay involved academically, to catch up with what you missed during the school year, or to continue to learn. I know that watching my students, their reading always goes down over the summer, and their math always goes down. And I always try to get them active, but it never works completely to get them back up. And and teachers get so frustrated because they have to reteach at the beginning of the school year again. So summer reading is one of the best ways to, reading is one of the best ways to increase scores. So those are just a couple of things, but I wanted to mention, actually, if you go to the next slide, I believe there's some more pieces. So a couple of the other pieces is to be involved this summer in your college exploration. If you're a rising junior, or even if you're a rising senior, this summer is your time to be exploring your schools. A lot of seniors with COVID, there just wasn't the energy and there just wasn't the attention span to be researching schools. So I am noticing now a lot of students are now focused on their college exploration. So for a rising senior, this summer you got to finalize your college list. The quicker your college list gets finalized, the more essays you can do this summer, the more applications you can get done. The exploration part is feeling comfortable and confident in the list of schools you're going to apply to. You want to feel like you know what schools you're applying to. And since you can't really go visit schools, there are so many opportunities to explore online. Every student should be doing the admissions programs that colleges are offering right now. Registering through the admissions office, taking a virtual tour, taking a virtual information session, or doing a virtual information session is a must. So going through the admissions office directly, but there's also lots of different ways to explore schools. Campus Reel is one of my favorites. Campus Reel, REEL, campusreel.org, are videos that current college students take of their experiences at colleges. So they may be wandering through the quad, they may be wandering through the dining hall, they may be hanging out in the dorm with some friends. You get the real experience of what it's like to be at that school. So that's helping students who can't go visit schools right now to get a better sense of what schools are like. The reality is you may not be able to visit schools before you apply this year. So it's important to be doing as much exploration as you can. And then working on applications this summer is essential. And there's too many students that leave their essays for the fall and drop the ball completely, and life gets crazy stressful, and the quality of the essays are not there because they wait to the fall to get all of their applications done. You have no excuse this summer with being a more lockdown kind of summer. So you have the time to be working on essays and applications. So those were just the other pieces. And one thing I forgot to mention in here is this summer is the time to do scholarships. You can research scholarships. You can develop your scholarship spreadsheet that has all the scholarships you want to apply to that you would qualify for. So spending time this summer researching scholarships too is another really important one. So those are things I wanted to mention. And if you go to the next slide, Patrick, and then, yep, then we're diving more. Oh, actually go back one more, because this way we can transition into Chris's piece is really starting to transition into essay work now. Now is the time. So Chris, I'll pass it on to you.
Okay, so something that's really simple to point out is that there is sometimes this impression that the common application, which is the portal where the vast majority of college applications get submitted, exceptions to that are the UC system, which will apply to all of you in California, and University of Texas. But for the vast majority of them, there's this portal. And there's this understanding or misunderstanding about parents that it opens on August 1st. All that means is that they rinse out all of the old information, and starting August 1st, you can input new information. However, you can start writing your essays today. Now, I've already been working with some students for a few weeks. So there's no reason not to start now on the main essay, which is referred to often as my college essay, the personal statement, or the Common App essay. You can start anytime, and it would be great to get that big piece done and feeling good about it, because when you do feel good, you start to develop confidence in your process rather than anxiety. So there are 7 prompts. Something worth understanding about them is that these are not like high school essays where you look at the prompt and try really hard to address it and feel that you are going to be judged in relation to the prompt. Whatever you write based on the prompt, if someone learns about you, and that's a phrase I learned from Stacy, they're going to be happy, and the prompt is almost secondary. The reason they have them is that if you gave a few 100,000 high school students a blank piece of paper and said, write something and I'll let you know if you get into college, that would be very stressful. So these are just launch pads of things you could likely write that would get you saying something personal. If you scroll ahead one page, every student I've ever worked with, and I've now done more than 300 one-on-one students, has done prompt number 7. And you can see it's open-ended. Share an essay on any topic of your choice. So to me, that sums up the open-ended nature of this question. If you find it easier to focus on another prompt, great. But I think the statistic is that 42% of people do number 7. Mm-hmm. A rumor worth knocking down is some people say, oh, well, if you want to get into Stanford, you better do prompt number 3. And if you want to get into Michigan, you better do prompt number 4. I don't see any evidence that that's being true, of that being true, because all of my students have number 7, and they get into all kinds of schools. So feel free to do that. Similarly, don't think that there is a Common App essay that will work for one school and is better for another. I just think people try to game it far too much. But the basic idea is you can start now and ideally have it done without too much drama well before you go back to school. Similarly, there are supplement questions, meaning school-specific questions. So once you know you're going to apply to a school, if you can get a sense, and it's hard to do if it's your first time, but most schools don't change their prompts. So again, you can start to work on these essays well before August 1st. And again, it's great to have a lot of stuff done before you go back to senior year, because you're going to be busy and you don't need another writing intensive project. So if you go forward one more slide, they did in the past weeks, the Common App added this question. If you want to say something about COVID, I don't have a strong opinion yet about the importance of writing something. I believe that people will feel pressured to do something. Maybe Stacy, you have a better take than I do about whether you have to do that or the kind of thing that would be good to write.
The students I'm talking to is many of them have something to say that is hard to fit in within the activities list or within the, or it's not as appropriate for the additional information section because it's a COVID related thing, where they may say, I was accepted into this program, but was not able to attend. And all the webinars I've been attending with college admissions professionals, they're all saying, we want to know what you were going to do. You know, we want to know what you had planned on doing, what you were accepted to. Let us know all of that. So, so this section may be a great place to fit some of those pieces. I mean, some families or some students are going to talk about their direct impact. My grades are now pass fail and they have something to explain about. Or none of my, you know, in my region, there are no testing sites. I have not been able to, and I'm not going to be able to, you know, there could be some of even those special circumstances within it. Some students may have had to take on some additional responsibilities. So I have a couple of clients where mom and dad still had to work very aggressively out of the house, and they had younger siblings. So the older siblings just had to care for the younger siblings and also help cook meals and everything, because parents actually, their work increased and they just couldn't care for the family in the same way. So there's some special circumstances. I think it's going to really depend on the student. And I think that's something that you're going to have to think through, is how you want to use this. And if you do, because there are going to be students that are not going to use it. But I feel like the students who have had some sort of need to explain something that was impacted by COVID, this is really a good opportunity to write something.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But it's not going to be a fancy essay. It's 250 words. So it'd be something super matter of fact.
Yeah, my guess will be that the use and evaluation of this will, as with other things, vary school by school. Mm-hmm. The Common App portal decided, let's make this an option. And some schools may think we can learn a lot from this, and others may say, we'll stick with the usual questions.
Yeah, but I think one of the reasons for this is to avoid the big COVID essays. You know, to avoid using the Common App essay for COVID. I think that's what one of the pieces to this too.
Sure.
It's an outlet so that not every major essay is about COVID.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
So just as with the main essay for the Common Application, the University of California questions are available. So if you go to the website or just Google UC Personal Insight questions, they're all there, and you are given 8 and you choose 4. My recommendation for which 4 to choose is pick a range. Figure out what's going to make the most interesting portrait of you, rather than talking about 3 different angles on your interest in computer science. And they're set up so that everyone can find 4 that and connect to something you do. But again, it's obvious advice that if the questions are available and you have the time with a little motivation, it's great to get a head start, particularly since my guess is that with grades variable in junior spring, colleges are really going to take a hard look at how you do senior fall. So insofar as you want to be locked and loaded and have a great fall, again, it's great to have a lot of big writing stuff out of your way. So that's the sort of practical advice on, get started. If you scroll ahead, I'm not sure if this slide survived. If you're interested in any specifics of what to actually do for this, I'm doing a free webinar on Saturday. Go to my website, sign up, and so I'll actually be offering some pretty usable stuff for how to get yourself on the right track. But that's sort of get started. If you're interested in how to get started, I'm happy to have you on Saturday or one of these other dates.
This is awesome. Chris has, he's one of my favorite essay people because he has a really great way of helping and coaching students through this. And if you have not started working on your Common Application essay, this is a really kind of great introduction. And if you think about it, June could be Common Application essay. You could knock out that COVID essay if you're going to write it. And if you're doing the University of California application, you could knock out 4 essays, and that is your June and July right there. And ideally working on some of the college essay supplements too. You're already knocking out a whole bunch. So this is great that you're offering this too.
For what it's worth, there's a lot of misinformation that can get you going the wrong way. And I hate to make English teachers my whipping post, but even seemingly reliable source will give you tips or advice that are not wrong, but they're vague to the point that they're unhelpful. And it's hard. You've got a blank piece of paper, and this is an important time of your life as a high school student. So I just think it's helpful to have something pretty specific so you can get going in the right direction.
And I do think that essays are even going to be more important this year.
Well, that addresses the question that came up earlier. If test scores, an admissions officer can't really do much with that, but it is sort of a litmus test is not the right word, but a barrier to entry, or a way that they do some triage, maybe even because they want a certain ranking in US news. When you take that piece away, the pie gets redivided, and one of the things that must become more important is, well, we want to get to know you, and your essays are your best chance to speak for yourself in your own voice.
Yeah, and I imagine that with an absence of great information and an absence of a lot of information, that the information that you do get on your essay, all of it becomes a little bit more important, or on your application, all of it becomes more important. The next one.
Yes, and this goes back to the summer learning.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what I was beginning to talk about earlier, right? Things that you can do over the summer in terms of learning objectives, reviewing major content from the previous school year, especially content that was covered incompletely or perhaps not at all due to changes due to online school. I think, for instance, I was telling Stacy an hour ago that I just actually got off of a meeting with a student who's an Algebra 2 student. And both the SAT and ACT cover all of Algebra 2. And her class they were unable to cover the last unit that they planned on covering. I think fortunately for us, the teacher actually had previously released all the topics that were in the unit, so we're able to go through and cover those ourselves after school is over. Working with students in this capacity is one of my favorite things to do, I think, because there's no stress, there's no looming deadline, there's not a bunch of other competing interests, and I think especially now with fewer other things to do. Well, I mean, there's plenty of other things to do, we'll say, but there are still fewer, and this is another productive way to use your time down. Looking ahead to next school's coursework, if you anticipate having any difficult classes next year, if you're taking a difficult course load with a lot of APs or something like that, working and doing some preview work into some of the books that you're going to be working with, or like Stacy was saying, search out some other online resources where you can get some background and do some exploration of those topics to make your school year easier. There's a lot of things you can do now to make the next school year easier, including getting application work done over the summer. Yeah, in general, I think next school year is going to be really, really important in achieving college acceptance goals, especially for everybody, I guess. So yeah, just getting caught up, making sure that you're getting caught up and using this time to get ahead, and extra emphasis on the summer reading portion as well. Yeah.
Perfect.
So this is all of our contact information, and I know we were answering questions a little bit earlier, but specifically wanted to open the floor now if anybody has any questions they want to submit. We'd love to take them in time, and we'll hopefully all have a chance to speak to them. If you want to address them to someone in particular, feel free to do that, and we'll pitch it. So the first one I got here from Tracy is, would colleges take upcoming fall grades as GPA calculation? In the past, I think they only took up to junior year. If not, how would the fall course list or grades impact admission?
Yes, so I'll jump in with that one. So normally in a regular year, colleges will, if a college recalculates GPAs, or if they look at the GPA off of the high school transcript, they look at 9th through 11th. I actually worked at a university that we only did 10th and 11th, but I also worked at a university that did 9 through 11. What they have to do because of the way they want to see full year grades, they usually, and I suspect they're going to do that next year as well, they're not going to roll in the first semester of 12th grade into an actual GPA because they never do. I don't see it changing. But what they're going to do is the GPA will be based on whatever you have 9 through 11, whether it's first semester or both semesters of junior year. They'll look at a GPA in that way. But most colleges are probably going to have to move to some type of recalculation and not pull it right off of the transcript if they have pass fail. They're just going to get super creative in how they're going to evaluate classes. The one thing that's really important to know that for a lot of schools, the GPA is actually pretty insignificant. The GPA from the high school transcript is pretty insignificant. Typically how I explain it to families is they actually have their own calculations that most colleges will use. So they will evaluate your entire transcript. They'll go through it. Typically they pull out the 5 core classes only and not even look at the classes like arts and music and gym and those sort of classes, but they'll look at just the 5 traditional academic core classes and they'll recalculate the GPA based on that. When we usually see a recalculated GPA, it's usually from private schools. A lot of public schools or state schools will just pull the GPA out. They're just going to get super creative. They will look at senior year grades, but if they're having this early action or early decision, what they may do is they may request just first quarter or first marking period grades. Or they may hold on to you and wait and defer you to the regular decision pool if they need to see a full semester of grades before making a decision. But I don't see it rolling into an actual official GPA. It never has. And I just don't see how the way, for me working in admissions, and we had to always recalculate GPAs, it doesn't add up because usually you don't get those mid-year grades until a lot later. I hope that I have explained it.
Stacey, let me ask you a question to which I believe I know your answer, but I think this might be helpful to Tracy and others.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll start with a statement. I believe that the raw number of a GPA is overrated and
Yes,
misunderstood by parents.
absolutely.
The GPA is representative of its components. So what an admissions officer really wants to know is what kind of a student you are. The number is not going to tell them that. So they're pretty good at looking at what courses you took and how you did in those courses, and also the context, what courses were available at your school. So since Stacy worked at Johns Hopkins for a long time, maybe you could say a few words about how someone actually reads the academic part of a transcript.
So the first thing we would do is we would look at the individual classes students were taking each year. We'd look at the high school profile to see, has the student taken advantage of the opportunities available at the school? So for example, if your school offers 10 APs and you take one at a highly selective school, like where I came from, that would not be a competitive applicant. So it's evaluating the actual courses you take, the trends of your grades. Do they go up? Do they go down? You know, are they consistent along the way? You know, are they mainly A's? You know, is there a couple B's? So yeah, the GPA is not a piece that was really something that we paid attention to. It was all these individual pieces. And then the recalculation would get us a new GPA based on those 5 core academic classes. So thanks, Chris. I mean, I'm not the best with wording. So, so you kind of broke it down. I get into technical too much.
The fear that students and parents have is you are basically summed up by 2 numbers, your GPA and your test score. But in fact, I think that admissions officers work very hard to use whatever information they've got to figure out who you are.
Yes. And I know a lot of parents are very concerned about this pass-fail piece. But if a student is taking these very rigorous classes, or they're worried about the weighted GPA versus not, I worked at schools where we didn't even look at weighting. You know, we didn't even weight GPA. Like we looked at, are you taking the most rigorous classes, and what are your grades in those classes? And we don't even care what you're, like where you place and all that stuff. Like it just depends on the information that the high school provides. They're going to evaluate you within the context of your school, and they're going to look at you, how you fall. And normally that person in the top of the class or top of the school group, so all the applicants we'd read those as a school group. So we'd read all those applicants together, so we could then see within the pool of students coming from that high school who we felt were the strongest and who were, you know, within that. And within that, typically the students right in the middle were the ones that were accepted because they're more interesting, were more engaged, because they were doing the extracurricular pieces that we would wanted to see, which were things that were not academic. We wanted to see students involved and staying committed to those activities for over 4 years, those sort of pieces. So yeah, I hope that explains some things. There was another question. Oh, the record. We're going to record this, so you'll have access to this after. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind sharing the slides, I think, as well, if you wanted to. That's fine.
Okay.
Got links and stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
Any more questions from anybody? If you open up your question and answer, we'd love to answer any more questions that people have that come up.
And some of the questions while we're waiting that came in when you registered, there's questions about like this. Some rising seniors are getting concerned about the defers, the students that are planning on going to college next year. If they decide to defer for a year and then go to college in 2021, there's some concern about what does that look like for rising seniors, and will it be harder to get into because there won't be as many spaces. Right now, what we're hearing is it's such a small number of students that are deferring that it's looking like it's not going to impact admission. But what I am telling families to do is start looking at what the colleges are announcing in terms of, are they going to go back to school next year or are they not? And this hybrid thing that a lot of schools are talking about, means that they'll probably be on campus, living on campus. And so what we're seeing is the families are saying, if they're going online, we don't want to pay the tuition, so we're going to defer for a year. If we go back to school, we'll pay. So that seems to be kind of the pieces that we're getting. That's what we're hearing a lot of. So if you can start paying attention to what colleges are announcing, are they going to go back? Are they not? That will help you to determine, is this going to be a more competitive school or not? Down the road, if you're on my email list, I'm going to be announcing all that information as I see it. But right now it's still too early.
But
Chris,
Stacey,
yeah.
my take is that to some extent, whatever the answer is, it's not really usable information, right? All we're doing is trying to say, are my chances better? But you're still going to apply and you'll find out if you get in.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw, I've been watching some webinars, so a little bit of information to contribute if we want to speculate, is that colleges are sensitive to the issue of too many people deferring and that affecting next year. And they seem to be pretty interested in still being able to admit a good class. So some people are going to start turning down deferrals. It's not like this is an open-ended thing and everybody gets one.
Yep.
One of my students was choosing between Duke and Penn. Duke said, sure, take a gap year. This kid had already had a plan. And Penn said, no, you can't take one. So he went with Duke. So don't assume it's a free-for-all and students just get to hit the button.
Yes.
The other thing is that as much as let's say there was a little more deferrals taking up some space, even more space might be opened up by international students not coming back.
Very true.
So if you look at top schools, that's 10 to 15% of the class. A ton of that didn't confirm for this year, which is why wait lists were way more active. Mm-hmm. So it's possible that a little more space getting taken up by deferrals could be balanced out or even overcompensated for, so it could be easier. But honestly, given the fluidity of the situation, both with visas and COVID, I don't think that's a knowable answer. So we'll just live for a little longer with the unknown of, will I get into college?
Yeah, and colleges don't know yet. But I will tell you, they're doing everything they can to get students back on campus next year, especially the private schools.
Yeah, and this hybrid thing is meaning different things at different places. I think the rumor mill right now is saying that at least at UC Berkeley, that hybrid is going to mean classes 25 and smaller, 25 and fewer students can be in person. This is unconfirmed, but everybody I've talked to doesn't remember an undergraduate class they were in at Berkeley that had 25 or fewer students. So if you're looking at being an undergraduate student there next year, it may just be a virtual type of thing. And paying for rent in Berkeley is not a trivial expense. So perhaps you would opt to just stay remote, unless you were a graduate student in one of these tiny classes or something like that. So hybrid is. It seems like the thing that they need to say in order to get you to show up, to commit. So I think
right.
A little bit of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
So Zach has an interesting question. I'm not sure if either of you have dealt much with transfer stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I can answer this one.
Okay, great.
So Zach, it's important to, first of all, if you are going to be a sophomore transfer, so that means you are a freshman in college and you're transferring for sophomore year, it's a little different than if you're transferring for junior year. So if you are, typically they still require their high school transcript and they want to see old test scores too. And they probably, if you want to submit new ones, they would require those. I'm not hearing anything about test optional for transfer or not. It looks like it's probably just going to be a standard policy for any applications next year. So yes, they will probably be looking at it. When I read transfer applications at the two different universities I worked for, the number one thing we were looking for are the professor letters of recommendation from your college. So they don't want to see high school teacher letters. They want to see professor letters. And the other thing was the grades that you took, or the grades that you got and the classes you took at the college level. And the other thing is the activities you were involved with on the college level. So if you were in college this year and you did activities your first semester and then you couldn't do activities the second semester because of COVID, they'll understand. But again, colleges do expect you to stay active, whether you have a job or you're volunteering virtually or you're staying engaged outside of academics, no matter what. So whatever that looks like to you, they want to be able to see. So they will be looking at the same three things: grades, activities, letters of recommendation from the college level as well. If you are going into junior year transfer, they place less weight on that high school stuff, but they still want to see it more. If you are going into sophomore year, they'll look at that more. So, and again, test scores, depending if it's a test optional school or not, they will be paying attention to those as well. But you're going to redo your application. Chris gets this all the time too. If you are transferring, can I just use my old essay? No, you cannot.
Well, the question is different. It's a different question. The question becomes, why do you want to transfer? You know, what inspires you about this new school that makes you want to move, as opposed to this more open-ended personal essay? So I actually think it's a more straightforward kind of essay that more students are comfortable with.
Agreed. And transfer students have so much more to say. They really do. They're in such a different place.
And they probably have a couple of years of English under their belt as well.
Yes.
And I'm not quite sure which situation Zach is referring to. I think there's also like community college transfers as well. And those get evaluated a little bit differently, especially if you're transferring to state systems. I know that there's a lot of pipeline programs from at least California community colleges either to the UC system or the CSU system. And some of those are actually like high school blind in terms of grades. So I could drop some acronyms on you, but one of them is called I Get C, and I forget what the other one for the CSUs is, but it's sort of a standard package of prerequisites that if you get these, so
very true.
There are a bunch of different situations that you can find.
Very true. Yeah.
In general, I think if you're at a community college specifically, they have counselors that specialize in especially those pipelines.
Yeah, but those are for California. It's the reciprocity, like those reciprocal agreements they have. If you're out of state, it can be a little bit different, I think, too. So, yeah, but there's definitely, and one of your best resources is a website called Transferology, and Transferology it's dedicated to transfer admission. And they have it's really cool because you can also figure out what credits will transfer from one school to the next. It's a really great website.
Great. I don't see any more questions. I think we could give it another minute or two if somebody wants to type out a question. If not, I think we can end. Yeah.
So just stay active this summer. That's really the big thing. If you are a rising senior, start working on applications and essays. If you are a rising junior, take advantage of starting to explore colleges. This is a great time of year to be doing a lot of different research, learning about different schools. And there's so many different resources out there to use. If you are looking at testing, some test prep this summer, getting exposure to the test, the practice test piece, practice testing to determine are you an ACT tester or are you an SAT tester is another good use of time this summer, especially if you're a rising junior. Getting exposure to each test. I am not a fan of you taking both tests officially, but rather than being very strategic and taking the test that you're stronger at and save time and energy by doing that and pick, if let's say in your practice testing, you determine, hey, the ACT feels so much better and I'm doing better at it, then only stick to that test and take that test officially.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that you can do online, I believe, as well. And any reputable test prep company can help you with as well. Of course, I'd be happy to help you, and my contact information is available on screen, as is Stacy's and Chrissy's.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time this evening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I don't see any more questions coming through.
Yep.
But yeah, feel free to reach out with questions that we didn't adequately address. I'd be happy to share the slides, and I believe Stacy's going to be sharing a video of the webinar as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Have a good evening.
Yeah. Hey, Patrick,
Yeah.
if it stopped, is it stopped recording and everything?
I can